Well, welcome, welcome. We are here with the Crowdfunding for Authors webinar. Victoria and I both love talking about this topic, so we will manage our excitement, but we love talking about this topic because it's a great opportunity for authors. And a lot of authors haven't either heard of crowdfunding for authors or aren't sure of the specific steps to take to build a successful, and I underline and yellow highlighter the word successful campaign, because we see authors launching campaigns all the time that you get rescue calls. Would that be fair to say, Victoria?
Yep. Yep.
So if you are listening later to the recording or joining us live today, this session is useful for authors who have a book right now, or who are writing a book and are getting close to getting it into production or being published. It's also a great webinar for authors who have a book that needs to be revived. Maybe it's collecting dust, maybe it's lost its marketing traction. Crowdfunding can help with that. And it really is also for coaches and content creators and entrepreneurs who want to be able to get their message out in the world in a much broader way with a bigger audience and having readers and fans around the world. So I don't know, I think we should start with introductions, Victoria, and dive right in. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think why don't I introduce you first? So, Charmaine is an 11 times best-selling author, 5 of her own books, featured in 11 others, and 2 more ready for release. She is a certified professional speaker, as we've already heard, very eloquent, an expert in collaboration, funding dreams, and bringing projects to life. Her company, RaiseReady, has helped many clients implement her strategies to make their book a business. Over the years, she has raised millions of dollars for projects she has been involved with, for charities that she supports, and for her own projects, and in collaboration with her clients. She has sold thousands of books through collaborative campaigns, sponsorship, and bulk buys.
Thank you, Victoria. And I love introducing you. As you can tell, Victoria hails from the UK. She's lived in Canada now for about 19 years. And one of the things that really, really surprised me about Victoria and getting to know her as this exquisite marketer and crowdfunding expert is she actually studied biochemistry in university. So in addition to being a crowdfunding and marketing expert, that was one field of study. So I just want to pause there before I continue on. Is there a relevance to that field of study and crowdfunding, Victoria?
Well, I don't think I've actually actively used my biochemistry since I graduated, but the analysis is absolutely so important for a campaign, because you can see, sometimes you do an activity and it has a huge impact. And so, okay, I'm going to do more of that. And sometimes you do an activity, it's like, that didn't quite work. And you just review it and tweak it a bit. There's a bit of the sort of gamification. And a lot of that comes from sort of the analysis that I would do as a scientist anyway. So I think that's the benefit I got from it.
Beautiful. And Victoria's got a very long-standing experience with marketing, and she's worked for brands such as Tide, Pampers, NMAX, and TD before setting up her own consulting practice more than 9 years ago. And in her consulting practice, she provides strategic marketing support and coaching, as well as running crowdfunding campaigns for her clients. And this always just makes me want to put a seatbelt on from stopping me jumping in the air when I talk about the number of campaigns that you've been involved with and the dollar value of what you've raised. So Victoria, you've been involved in well more than 100 campaigns and have raised more than $20 million through crowdfunding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want that to also to freak people out, because, when we're talking about books, a lot of those, it's the sort of the 10K, the 20K that is what you need to bring your book to life. But if you need more, then there's certainly things that you can do through crowdfunding too.
Yes. Well, and I think with that more than 20 million that you've raised collectively through the different campaigns, one of the things that's so interesting is that each campaign is unique. Each campaign is strategically planned and designed. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Victoria and I have now known each other for more than 5 years, and we've worked together on a number of different projects, including crowdfunding for authors. So I think, Victoria, we should dive in and start talking about crowdfunding. And how did you even get involved in this? Like, how did you start with crowdfunding?
Well, it was interesting. I was on the board of the Calgary Boys Choir, and they asked me to run a crowd fund for their 40th anniversary to make all their concerts free for everybody in Calgary. And I was like, I have no clue what a crowd fund is, but knowing me, I just went off and looked into it, and we set up the campaign. We raised enough money to make all the concerts free.
Wow.
And that allowed everybody was able to come to the concerts, which, a group of young boys singing, magical to hear. And it just blew my mind, how you can activate your community. You can get the people who are sort of, know you, who know your business or know your choir, and really get them to get behind. And it's all about sort of getting those small bits of funds from lots of different people. And that's one of the game changers. But the other game changer is it just democratizes access to capital. It isn't all about people with deep pockets. It's all about, getting people who are passionate about you, excited about you, are really wanting to see your book come to life. And this is something that we've seen, is people are really passionate about sort of like, this is a book I want to read, and I'm going to make it happen, and being part of the journey. So
the power of community.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, this week being Labor Day week is also power of employees. So if anybody on the call has a team, it's also activating your team as well as activating your your crowd, your community.
Good point.
So I'm going to fire a question back at you, if I may, Charmaine, because you're the author on this call. So why is it important to properly fund a book?
I love that question, because it allows us to springboard off of the fact that most authors, according to various research reports, most authors sell less than 250 books. And I know, after having done many of my own, 250 book sales is not enough to cover all of the costs of your book, your editing, your publishing, your marketing, your PR, your release, all of that. And so when we don't have the funds to properly launch our book doesn't do well. It impacts any other book that we do after that, regardless of how you publish. So whether you self-publish, whether you're working with a traditional publisher, or if you're working with a hybrid publisher, it takes funds to publish a book, but it also takes a crowd to help your book survive and do well in the world. That's what I love about crowdfunding, is that it taps into what I call OPA, other people's audiences. Sometimes with authors, they fund all of the expenses for the book themselves. I've seen authors sort of digging into their retirement funds to get their book out in the world. And there is another way. Crowdfunding is another way. When we see authors traditionally publish, sometimes there's a myth. Authors believe that if you have a traditional publisher, that they incur all the costs. And while a publisher does incur a lot of the costs of your book, we still have to market it. We still have to sell it. We still have to do activities that will help bring our book to life. Then, of course, we've got authors who rely heavily on the pre-sale. So when the book is ready to go, they look at pre-sales. Campaigns through crowdfunding is a great way to have pre-sales go through the crowdfund. In fact, we have authors right now that have taken our programs that are doing that very activity, doing pre-sales through crowdfunding. And then one of the things I love, and I get excited about this, Victoria, is selling your books in bulk. And we see authors being able to sell, instead of one copy of their book, 5, 10, 25, a box, 100 or more, when they do that through crowdfunding. Now, another neat element about this is also that some authors have other what we call wraparound products or services. For example, a coaching program. You've got a book and a coaching program, or a book and a journal, or a book and a speaking topic. You can actually blend all of that into your crowdfunding campaign and really grow your business. The reality is it takes time, know-how, energy, and funds to get your book out in the world, and crowdfunding can cover a few of those for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, it's one of the things that blows my mind is just all the different little costs that just add up
Oh,
to
yes.
get the book out there. But, you know, I probably should just, you know, I alluded to it, but I should probably define what crowdfunding really is. And it's all about taking your community, taking, you know, a large crowd of people and activating them so that they want to give a small amount of money. And that small amount of money gets together to make that larger amount of money. And as we talked about, that could be 5, 10, 20K when it comes to talking about books.
Yeah. And one of the things that's always interesting for me is you've talked about how crowdfunding is not a new thing. A lot of people think it's a new thing, and yet you always tell this incredible story that it's been around a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you think about sort of, you know, like the great composers like Mozart, I mean, he crowdfunded his music. He got lots of people, actually usually a bit richer, to get together and put some money together to actually fund all his music. You look at something like the Statue of Liberty, where the statue was donated, but the actual plinth that the statue sat on was the local newspaper ran a crowdfunding campaign through the newspaper. And if you sort of donated, you know, $1, I think it was $1, you got a 6-inch statue of the Statue of Liberty. And if you did $5, you got a 12-inch Statue of Liberty replica. And so that's how they funded the plinth. And so it's been around for a while. I mean, I think it was in the 80s, Marillion, the band, I'm going to show my age, they crowdfunded their album. And then in recent years, you know, we've seen the plethora of platforms that have come up. And what we're talking about, you know, typically is what we call a rewards crowdfund campaign. So this isn't your GoFundMe's that you hear about. Those are what we call donations campaign. These rewards ones are where people get perks back. So they're typically giving you that little bit of money and they're expecting something back. So typically your book, but we can get into all those other things later. But yeah, so I just wanted to ask you though, you know, one of the things that I see, I mean, we talk about community, but you know, let's talk a bit about how that community can also help authors. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So when authors crowdfund, they're generating revenue and they're building a community of people that want your book. So your perfect readers. And a lot of times authors will say things like, I don't have a big social media following. I don't have a big email list. What's always so interesting through crowdfunding is as you launch your campaign, and you start tapping into other people's audiences, meaning people are sharing the campaign in front of their audiences, it starts to help you build community. Now, the community is vital because this is a group of readers that you can actually tap into for feedback on your book cover, or for, as Victoria would say, market research. These are people that are going to help champion your book. We've actually seen through crowdfunds where authors that are continuing to post updates in their crowdfunding campaign, some of the community, the people that have supported the campaign through perks, purchasing one of the perks, they actually start sharing the campaign on social. They might start introducing the author to podcasters, which we have seen happening. So that community is really important because this is the group that you can tap into for support, for ideas, to help you bring the book to life, and long after, because this community doesn't go away for you. They come into your database, they start following you on social. So there's some really long-term benefits when we think about community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's the thing. It's one of those, you know, it's not just raising the funds. It's also building the community. It's also building awareness. It's also, as you talk about those test markets. So we've had people who've gone through our program who've actually used it as a way of finding out what the title of their book should be.
Right.
And, is it, which one makes the most sense? And whether it's asking the author community or their full community, we're finding both of those are getting sort of some really good insights. The other one I would also say is the cover, because sometimes people come back and they have a couple of cover options, and they're not sure which route to take. And sometimes we get a little too close to our own projects.
That's true.
And we're not always the target audience. So it's good sometimes to get it out there and to get that feedback.
Yes. Well, Victoria, you always talk about the importance of defining your objectives. And I'll premise that by we often see authors who get this idea often because they saw somebody else's campaign on social media. So it's Friday at 11 o'clock at night and they decide, oh, I'm going to do a crowdfunding campaign. And they push go the next day, no planning. It's very clear when you look at the campaign, there were no objectives. And in those cases where there's no planning, no objectives, not knowing how to do a crowdfunding campaign, they typically fail miserably. And that's when we get these rescue calls. So Victoria, can you talk to us about why setting your objectives for your campaign is absolutely critical?
Yeah, no, it's like everything in life. Anything you measure is what actually happens. If you don't measure it, it doesn't happen. So part of it is just that, part of it is actually getting a full handle on how much money do I actually need to raise.
Right.
And sometimes it's more than you think because you don't think of all those little bits we talked about. And sometimes it's less than you think because, you think, oh, I'm going to have to spend, thousands and thousands on advertising. And actually other people's audiences, borrowing a crowd, getting onto podcasts, etc. There's lots of more cost-effective ways of getting your message out there. So having that objective, I think, is important. But I think even more important than that is actually defining your audience. So who is your target audience? The reason I say that is because, and I mean, I'm hoping you'll back me up on this one, Charmaine, but, when you ask who is your target audience and people say everyone.
How do you market to everyone?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So really understanding your niche. And I'm just going to give an example and then I'll go back to the defining your niche. But when we went through this process, actually, the very first time we did the full course, it was interesting. One of the people on the course rewrote their book once they had defined their target audience, because they realized, who they were really writing for, how they wanted them to feel, and what outcomes they wanted from the book. And so they realized they had to go back and they're going to have a much better book for
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
But it is that thing of sort of really working out, I mean, if your book is a sort of, it's a great story, if it's, say, a great love story, not everybody wants to read a great love story. Not everyone wants to read a steampunk book. It's actually understanding who is your target audience and who's going to really benefit from that book. And then the book's going to resonate with them. And they're going to be telling everybody, all their steampunk friends, about this amazing steampunk book that they've just written. And it's going to have a huge impact there. And, you may not shake the whole world, but you're going to shake the world that matters. And so that's why having your target audience is really important. And certainly when we're talking about, a lot of the coaches, etc., one of the things that I find with the coaches is their coaching is usually to address a specific issue or problem. And so why not speak to the people who have that specific issue or problem? Because when you target your messaging, it resonates so much more. And when it resonates, people feel, oh, she's writing for me. And they feel it's personal and they're more likely to act on it. So this is the thing that, I just think it's really important to define that. It's just one of those things that sometimes we do at the beginning of the book. Sometimes it happens at the end of the book. But if it happens, I think it's a real benefit.
Yes. So defining your audience, really having your objectives. And then I know you also talk about you were mentioning actually rewards campaigns and the word perks a few minutes ago. You mentioned GoFundMe, which is more for personal fundraising. It's a donation campaign. Can you talk a little bit about the platforms that we see authors looking at for crowdfunding their books?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked a bit about rewards campaigns. And so, rewards campaigns, as say, when people give or back a campaign expecting to get the perk back. Now, it isn't selling. So you're not selling. However, if you don't deliver the book or whatever, this is a very transparent process. And so you might find that your name is not blessed online. So highly recommend, getting all your ducks in a line. Talked a bit about planning before, but to make sure that you can do that. Now, with those platforms, any of those rewards platforms, they're ones that you've probably heard of, like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. So those ones, they're almost global. I won't say global. You can then determine sort of, if you're going to just, make your book available in Europe, make your book just available in North America, just in Canada, just in the US, have shipping fees, etc. And then, they will handle taking the payments, etc. But they also take their little pound of flesh as part of that process too. But they're well known. So one of the good things is you can say, I'm running a Kickstarter, and people probably have an idea of what you're doing. We found a number of people have started to use Crowdfunder. And the reason that they use that is because it actually calculates the shipping at the end. So it means that you're not limited to where you're shipping to. You can, it's the person deals with the shipping. And they also have a number of different payment options, which are a little less pound of flesh or very little pound of flesh, if you're looking at that. So those would be the ones that we typically find authors are using. One of the things we saw recently, which I thought was pretty cool, was one author ended up fulfilling her orders through Amazon, and she got an Amazon Prime subscription and then just shipped the book off. Now, the downside of that is you can't personally sign every book. And actually, that's one of the things. This is one of the big differences about crowdfunding than selling. And you can go into all the stores and the bookstores, and you can sit there and you can talk to people, and you can do real signings. I mean, we haven't been able to do that for a few years, but that's a lot of effort. Now you can crowdfund that, but you might want to do you might want to do it virtually. That's something you can do with a crowdfunding campaign. But the fact that you can actually build a relationship up with an author, that is a huge differentiator from buying a book from a store. And we've probably all been into a bookstore where it says this is a signed copy by the author because they were in 6 months ago and they've got something. And okay, that's quite nice, but it's not like it's a personal message to you. So that's the only thing. I thought it was a neat way of getting the books distributed, but on the other side, you lose out on that personal touch.
Well, and I think that's one of the things I love about crowdfunding is there's so much room to creativity. Now, I know one of the things, so creativity, but within some parameters. And what I mean by that is Victoria always says that success breeds success, and it is essential to have a plan. And the plan exists for a number of different reasons. So talk to us about the plan and why you always say the first 7 days is critical in a crowdfund campaign.
Well, I mean, part of it is just statistics, going back to my love of statistics. So if you hit 11% of your target on day one and 33% in the first week, the chance of you hitting your goal are very high. Basically, you're going to get it. So that's the real benefit of going down those routes. And it is exactly as you say, success breeds success. You know, I've had campaigns not in this space, but they're, you know, you go in and it's not doing great. And we've actually sort of, you know, asked people and they go, well, if nobody else would back it, why would I back it? What am I missing? And so it's a bit of, you know, it's that social trust. It's that ability of getting people backing a campaign. So that's one of the reasons why we like to have many people, you know, on there from the first, from the first day. It's just to really prove. Plus, you know, also, we talk about your community. So not all the sales are going to come from your community. About a third are going to come from people you know, people you, you know, it might have been somebody you worked with 20 years ago, and they just remember, you know, if you're writing a book about leadership and they remember you were a great leader, you can go back to them and say, look, I'm writing a book on leadership. And they're like, absolutely, I want to get that book, because they know you, they trust you, etc. So activating that first third is really important. And those are the people you're going to get on the first day. So that's one of the reasons for it. So
can you tell us a little bit more around the importance of storytelling and how storytelling fits into this 90-day planning time that we need for a successful campaign?
Yeah, another good point. Well, as authors, I'm expecting you to be good storytellers. But it's also to get across that why, it's that purpose. It's you know, part of it is the style you write in, because people might find, oh, this is really engaging, oh, this is, you know, it's we see a lot and hear a lot about people going, oh, you need to, you know, write for a, you know, for a grade 7 student, or, you know, you want to write more highbrow, you know, and it comes back to who your target audience is, what they're looking for. Are they looking for something easy to read? Is it easy to understand, easy to follow? Or actually, are they wanting to stretch their brain? Are they wanting to go into a different part of their brain? And so, you know, with things like that, you know, that really does change your storytelling. And so if in everything you do, you keep true to your voice, keep true to yourself, and build that consistent brand, then people are going to go, I like the way this person writes. I want to read a whole book about it. So part of it is just that. It's just getting you to tell your story, and the way you tell your story. But part of it is the story itself. And so in that case, it is about making it feel relevant. And it comes back to that sort of, you know, if it's a sort of a business problem you're solving, what's the pain point you're solving? You know, how are you solving it better than anybody else? Making it personal. Why are you the best person to write this book? Because the likelihood is that the book you're writing has already been written, and not just once, but multiple times before. So why is your book going to be the best one for the person who is reading it? Because you know, so you know, that storytelling is making it personal in your personal journey. So you might have say a story about a dog. I don't know why I thought of that one. And you know, but it's sort of like, you know, how, you know, you might talk about sort of how a dog has changed your life, and bringing a dog into your life has, you know, helped you cope with stress or something like that. I'm making something up like that. But when you talk about how it has worked for you, and it's your personal story, but what you've learned on the way, that is also another aspect of storytelling that can really help.
Yeah. And I think with campaigns, when we look at author campaigns, one of the ways, just to put this out to all of you that are joining us live today or listening later, a great way to learn about crowdfunding for authors is to also go on to the different platforms and search out author campaigns to see how people are telling their story. What does their video look like? How are they communicating? What kind of perks did they choose if they've done a rewards campaign? And one of the things I learned with my first book, On Toby's Terms, is that people want to know the author behind the book. People are interested in learning about your writing journey, about where some of the content for your book came. So this is crowdfunding is a way of actually communicating that to your community that you are building, as well as your future readers. Now, I want to go back to something, Victoria, because you've talked about messaging and planning, and I know that both of these are critical. So tell us a little bit more about this planning process and why it's essential for the success of the crowdfund.
Yeah. So as you say, it's, we often hear about the builders and they will come, and it's something that typically you do need to bring your whole, as we talked about, activate your whole audience. And so actually, first off, let's identify your audience, like who you actually speaking to. So we like to do a 90-day planning process, and then we like to run a 30 to 45-day actual crowdfund. So yeah, one of the things I would say is, if you're looking to do this for Christmas, you're gonna have to get your skates on, because it's getting it's just getting quite tight at the moment. So just to give you a heads up on that. So in that 90 days, it's understanding what your story is, understanding who your target market is, looking at who's in your crowd today, looking at other people's audiences, looking at how to expand that crowd, and actually activating that crowd. So starting to get that messaging out there, starting to get people excited about your book, wanting to sort of get in and get to know you, comes back to that personal nature again. And then also, getting your stuff ready. Like, what are my perks going to be? I mean, typically we're looking at 3 to 5 perks. We don't like to have any more than that, because, we live in such a complex world. If you give people too many choices, you get analysis paralysis. People they'll walk away. And that sounds sort of counterintuitive. Like, they really want your book, you think they would just get your book. But if you give them like, oh, should I get the book with the journal, or should I get the book with the hour session, or should I get the book with the, and they don't know, and so they don't make a decision, and then you lose out altogether. So 3 to 5 that actually mirrors your target audiences, perfect. And so you've also got to look at, if you're giving something tangible like a journal, even your book, what's the cost of it? Like, how much is that actually?
The budget.
Yeah. So if it's going to cost $10 to put your book together, you can't sell the book for $8.99. So you've got to have those numbers, and so those sort of things just take a bit of time, because what you don't want to be is at the end is when you get all your money in and you don't have enough money to cover the perks that are coming out. The whole idea of this is to cover your costs. Yeah. And so that's where that bit of planning helps. You don't have it too long. So that's the only thing I would say, is you don't want to draw it out too long, because what you don't want is, months and months of emails going out to your audience going, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And they go, so is Christmas. And, so it's a bit of a fine balancing act. And that's one reason why we say 90 days to get it ready, because we feel that's enough time to do it. And I'll be honest, it's a bit of work. It's not, it's not full-time 8 hours every day, but I would say, you probably should be looking to spend 3 or 4 hours every week on it. And some of those things, sorry, I'm going a bit off tangent, but I'm just getting excited by this. But some of the things are just because they take time. So getting a podcast, usually the podcast people are booked for a month or 2 in advance. So you're not going to get a podcast until 60 to 90 days out, which is perfect for a book launch. But if you're trying to launch in like a day, it ain't perfect. Or it might be something like running your social media ads. So especially today, because of Meta and X or Twitter or whatever it's called this week, the standard, LinkedIn changed their algorithm last week. So because of all these changes, sometimes you want to do things slowly. So with advertising, we recommend, reaching out. We do what we recommend people do awareness or engagement ads, and they're super low cost. We're talking about $2-3 a day. And what you're doing is you're looking for people who engage with your ads, who engage or, who have some interaction, because those are the people where your story resonates. And so you want to run those for like 30, 60 days before your campaign goes live, so that as you're coming up to launch your campaign, you're going to go back to them and go, hey, you don't say it directly because people get freaked out by this, but you're going to say, hey, I saw you were interested in my book. Just to let you know, you can have early access. You can be one of the first people to get it. Sign up to find out more. And you're giving people a very personal response, and that really keeps the cost down. And it also makes sure you're talking to the people you really want. So that was a very long reason to say why 90 days is absolutely optimum, and planning. Be prepared to spend a bit of time, but don't get too concerned. It's not 8 till 5, 6 days a week.
Well, I think that's important information, because sometimes for authors that are new to learning about crowdfunding, there's a little bit of a misunderstanding in that a lot of authors, if they're just learning about crowdfunding, they think that the work is just plugging all the information into the crowdfunding platform page, and then you press launch, and then magic happens. And people are supporting your perks all over. And this is the part where you said, you've got to put some time into the work. Things like providing people with pre-written copy, swipe copy that they can share out for you. That takes a little bit of time to craft up those emails, or crafting up the updates that you're going to put in your campaign, or developing your landing page to start bringing people into your landing page to then move them over to the campaign. So there's a lot of these steps that help the crowdfund be highly successful. And when they're missed, it really shows. But when you say, Victoria, it takes a couple of hours a week, in that 90-day process, these are some of the things that authors are doing in that 90 days. I talked to an author recently who actually, part of their planning process, what they're thinking about is doing almost like, she called it a conversation. So it was going to be a weekly conversation for 15 minutes, but only for the people that are in the crowdfunding campaign. So these are people that have backed one of the perks. And part of that perk, it was a higher end perk. So one of the perks that was with the higher end perk was this weekly kind of a meet the author. And what the author was planning on sharing was what she had written that week, and what was it like, and what were the stumbling blocks, what were the challenges.
How valuable is that?
I just thought that's a really cool, I hadn't heard of that before. And I thought, again, creative. I love that as well. And I just imagine this author sort of bringing in this already committed crowd, because they've supported a perk, but they're getting insights into the book. You're not reading them the book. It's not like a book reading club. You're giving them insights to the writing of the book. And imagine how much good gossip is going to go on when those crowdfund community members start talking about this cool author, you, and your book. And so this is where we say it can be creative, but imagine she's got to plan that out. She's got to create the email reminders, all of the things that goes into providing, I guess, I'm going to call it structure, having the structure to support your campaign.
Yeah. I love that, because what I love about that is it's providing incredible value to the participants.
Yeah.
They, as you say, they are going to tell everyone about this. Never miss 15 minutes every week, because it's so cool. But think about, for the author, the feedback she's getting.
Yes. Oh, exactly.
Because especially on a Zoom call, you can see people's eyes. I love to see the whites of people's eyes.
Yes.
And you can go, yes, I can, I can see that they like what I've written and they're excited and this is great. Or you can see someone screw their head up and you go, oh, perhaps I'm going down the wrong path.
Right.
So,
and you hear how people language things. So how is it that they're communicating? Is that communication that you can somehow weave in your book? So that was the seed I wanted to, a new learning that I had about crowdfunding. And I'm thinking we should probably go to questions if people have any questions. What are you thinking, Victoria?
I just want to say one point. One of the things is, yes, it does take some time, but because it's the value, it can be a premium perk. And so that sometimes, when you've got some of those costs, like your cost to actually develop a book, sometimes you're looking at how do I justify this? That's a way that you can justify it and give, really good value, but you can also make some good money to support your writing and your launch.
Yeah. So it's be creative and think about what's going to support your campaign. Every book is different. Every author goal is different. And so while we share ideas of what one author is doing, that may not work for every book. And I see this happen a lot. Authors see other authors doing something interesting and intriguing. They see it posted on Facebook and then they run with it, trying to implement it for their brand, for their book, for their community. And sometimes it flops, and it's just because it wasn't the right strategy. It's a great strategy, but maybe not the strategy that will work with your book. And I know that firsthand with my own books. What I used to do to market my On Toby's Terms book, which was a book about my dog, is very different to what I do to marketing the collaborative books I'm in or the business books that I write. So again, it's got to be really focused around your audience and the genre of your book and what your overall goals are. So feel free to put any questions in the chat box, or the chat just goes to Victoria and I, and Q&A just goes to Victoria and I as well. So any questions that you've got. While you're thinking of questions, there is a couple things that I will mention around crowdfunding. And one of them is to keep track of everything you do. That's why I love the planner that you have, Victoria, in the Crowdfunding for Authors programs, because people can keep track of every action they do. The reason I mention this is that you're not only tied to doing one crowdfund in your life. I've talked to so many authors who do a crowdfund for their book, whether their book is new or it's been around a while. Or I see authors now saying, I'm going to do a sequel, or I'm going to do another novel. Or I talked to an author a few years ago who had written a book about travel. This was really interesting, a book about travel, and just kind of, it was a memoir. And then she thought, oh, every place I traveled, I had some favorite recipes and favorite music, and maybe I'll do a recipe book. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. So you can keep creating wraparound products or services around your book and crowdfund for that. And there was a question that came in, will there be a replay? Absolutely. There will be we are recording this for you, so not to worry. The other piece that I wanted to add around crowdfunding for authors, Victoria, you always talk about there's some key timelines, and you mentioned a few minutes ago, if you're looking at this for Christmas, you better put your running shoes on. Tell us the times that maybe work well and not so well for crowdfund.
Yeah. So, we talk about sort of Christmas. The one thing I will say is I don't like to start any non-donations crowdfunds after about the 16th of November, because people just are in seasonal mode. They're in donations mode, especially with things like Giving Tuesday. So they will give for a charity, but they're not really into backing campaigns. So you really want to be out of market by then. So that's just a bit of a quick one to clarify on that point. So, January, everyone thinks they're broke.
The visa bill from the holidays just came in.
Exactly. Well, but the interesting thing is, often when the visa bill comes in, they're not as broke as they thought. and they'll start back in campaigns again. So after about the 21st of January, you'll start to see things pick up. Before that, you'll see like nothing. It's dead. So, January is a dead month. July, August are dead months. We've just missed those dead months, but they're dead months for raising on your campaign. They're not dead months for planning. It's a great month for planning. So, if you feel, you're at the right stage to sort of, push through for a campaign on the run up to Christmas, great. You're going to have to motor, as I say, but you can do it. But otherwise, you might be looking into next year, in which case you can plan sort of November, December, January, look to launch in February. That would be perfect. February, March, April, great months. May, June, great months. July, people start getting into holiday mode. August, people are definitely in holiday mode. September, first 2 weeks of September are pretty crappy too, because people are getting, kids back to school. So, so we're just about to hit, a good time to run a campaign. So I think does that answer your question, Charmaine?
It absolutely does. And, the other element I was thinking about is some of the mistakes that we've seen authors make, or some of the rescue calls that we get. And I think most of the mistakes come down to not knowing the steps, choosing the right platform, not having the planning, and sometimes not customizing it for their book, like thinking, what will those audience members, what will that community really like? One idea, I get so many ideas from looking at what other authors do in their campaigns, and there's just some brilliant people out there doing really cool things with their books and crowdfunding. One of the authors that I was looking at had written a book. I believe the book was already out, is the feeling that I got from the book. They were using the crowdfunding to then go into translating the book into a number of different languages. This was a business speaker and wanted to have the book available in different languages. So this was a great, the book is out there and they're crowdfunding for one specific purpose. Another author we saw was going to crowdfund to do like a virtual book tour. Actually, I would say it was more of a virtual book and media tour. So you can be really creative. And one of the things that we get asked a lot, Victoria, is about stretch goals. And the one other piece I want to ask you, I forgot earlier, my apologies. When you talk about campaign platforms that allow you to keep the money as it comes in, and platforms that if you don't raise it all, you get nothing. Can you explain that? Because I forgot to ask you that earlier.
Yeah, no worries.
It's important.
Yeah, in the simple thing, we've got Kickstarter and Indiegogo. If we just look at those two, Indiegogo and Crowdfund are both the same in the sense of, if your goal is $10,000 and you raise $5,000, you can keep your $5,000. Now, the one thing I will say is make sure you can still deliver. So, if at $5,000 you can still put the book together, you can still deliver all the perks, etc., that you might have to, juggle around other ways of getting the funds, but make sure you can still deliver. Otherwise, I would say give the money back, because it's just not fair on the backers. You want to keep them sweet. Yeah. Kickstarter is different. It's what they call an all or nothing campaign. So if your goal is $10,000 and you raise $9,995 at the time when your campaign closes, you have to give all that money back. Eek. So, yeah,
it gives me heartburn just thinking about it.
I have to say, if I was in that situation, I'd go and buy my own perk for $5 just to get me there. But the other thing that you can do is, and what we look at is, what's the bare minimum you need to be able to launch a book. Right. So it might be that you could launch your book with 7,000, but to launch your book and your journal, it might be 12,000. To launch your book, your journal, and to do a tour across North America might be 40,000. So what you might end up doing is actually launching for the 7 and you hit the 7 and everyone goes, yay, you hit the 7. We talked about success breeds success. And you go, well, now I'm going to move my goal up to 12. And with my goal, I'm actually now going to do the journal. And everyone gets all excited and they're like, oh, I'll upgrade my perk and I'll get the one with the journal. And you hit the 12 and everyone goes, yay, you're so successful. But right now I'm going to tour across the whole of North America. I'm going to go for 40. And this is, so it comes back to what we were saying about success breeds success, but it's what you need to do to ensure that you don't have to give the money back, because you really don't want to give the money back.
Yes. Well, and if there's no final questions, I will, Victoria, we have a workshop coming up that dives deep into the planning. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so if anybody's excited about that, getting in there for Christmas, then we actually have a workshop with a workbook that you can work through. There's lots of works in that statement, but it's a 2-hour workshop. It's $97, and you can sign up for it on Eventbrite, and we will go through in detail that planning process, and it is a sort of fill in the gaps, so you can start to sort of put in the structure around those elements you need for planning your campaign. So hopefully we've got some creative juices going there.
Great.
And we would love to see some of our attendees stay joining.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Victoria, it's always such a pleasure to talk about crowdfunding with you, especially as it relates to authors. And every time I talk to you, there's new ideas that come up and new trends and changes within the platforms as well. So I continue learning from you. Thank you for that.
Oh, no. And that was a great little insight there for the 15 minutes. I'm going to sort of, that's a very good one. But no, thank you. And I always enjoy talking to you, Charmaine. We come at things from different angles, but I think, with the backgrounds we have, it sort of hopefully will be very supportive for anybody who's curious about crowdfunding for authors.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. And again, Victoria, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us on crowdfunding for authors and how to make it successful.
And you sharing your information and your knowledge on authors too.
My pleasure.
11 times successful.
Thank you, everyone.
Right. Take care.